The water was already rising when Diana Ellis stepped onto the wooden bridge that spanned the Red River, her worn leather satchel pressed against her chest as thunder cracked overhead like a whip against cowhide. It was June of 1874, and the spring rains had been merciless in Brownsville, Texas, swelling the river to dangerous heights. Diana had no choice but to cross. Her younger brother was waiting for medicine on the other side, burning up with fever in their small homestead, and she had just collected the precious bottles from the town doctor. The bridge groaned beneath her feet, a sound that made her heart stutter, but she pressed forward anyway. Halfway across, the world shifted. The support beams splintered with sounds like gunshots. Diana felt the planks give way beneath her boots, and suddenly she was falling. The satchel flew from her hands as she plunged into the churning brown water. The cold hit her like a fist to the chest, driving the air from her lungs. Her heavy skirts immediately dragged her down, the layers of fabric becoming anchors pulling her toward the muddy bottom. She kicked frantically, trying to reach the surface, but her head barely broke through before another wave crashed over her. The current was impossibly strong, spinning her like a leaf in a storm. Water filled her mouth and nose. She could not breathe, could not think, could not do anything but feel the terrible weight pulling her under. Through the roar of the water, she heard something else, a splash. Strong arms wrapped around her waist, hauling her upward. Diana gasped as her face cleared the surface, choking and coughing. The arms held her firmly, keeping her head above water, even as the current tried to tear them both downstream. "I have got you," a man's voice said near her ear, rough and breathless. "Stop fighting me and hold on." Diana's survival instinct took over. She grabbed onto the solid body behind her, feeling powerful muscles working to keep them both afloat. The man kicked hard, angling them toward the riverbank. The current fought them every inch, but he was strong and determined. Diana's vision blurred as water streamed down her face. She coughed violently, her lungs burning. The man never loosened his grip. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute, Diana felt her boots scrape against mud. The man dragged her up the sloping bank, his arms still around her, until they collapsed together in the wet grass 20 yards from where the bridge had stood. Now only broken timbers jutted from the water like broken teeth. Diana rolled onto her side and vomited river water onto the ground. Her entire body shook violently. She could not stop coughing, each breath painful and harsh. A hand pressed against her back, steadying her. "Easy now," the man said. "Get it all out. You are safe." When Diana finally managed to draw a full breath, she pushed her soaked hair from her face and looked at her rescuer for the first time. He was kneeling beside her in the mud, as drenched as she was, water streaming from his dark hair and running down his face. He looked to be in his mid-20s with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and eyes the color of whiskey. His cotton shirt clung to broad shoulders and a muscular chest. Despite the situation, there was a calmness in his expression, though concern showed in the crease between his brows. "Can you breathe all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning her face. Diana nodded, still too shocked to form words. Her hands trembled as she tried to push herself to a sitting position. The man helped her, his grip gentle but steady on her elbow. "The medicine," she finally gasped out, looking frantically toward the river. "I had medicine. My brother needs it." The man followed her gaze to where planks and debris floated downstream. His expression was sympathetic but realistic. "It is gone. I am sorry. But you would be gone too if I had not been riding past." Diana felt tears burn her eyes, mixing with the river water on her cheeks. "He has fever. Bad fever," the doctor said without the medicine. Her voice broke. The man was quiet for a moment, then stood and offered her his hand. "My name is Robert Bradley. I work at the Double Bar Ranch north of here. Come on, let us get you somewhere warm and dry, and then we will figure out what to do about your brother." Diana looked up at him, at this stranger who had just risked his life to save hers. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Her legs wobbled beneath her. Diana Ellis, she managed. I live about 3 miles east with my brother Daniel. He is only 15. I cannot lose him. He is all the family I have left. Robert did not let go of her hand even when she was standing. You will not lose him. Where did you get the medicine? Dr. Harrison in town. Then we will go back to Dr. Harrison and get more. Robert led her toward a chestnut horse that was grazing nearby, apparently unbothered by the drama that had just unfolded. Can you ride? Diana nodded. Though everything still felt unsteady, Robert swung up into the saddle with easy grace, then reached down and lifted Diana up to sit in front of him. She had never sat so close to a man who was not family, and under normal circumstances she might have protested, but nothing about this day was normal. Robert wrapped one arm securely around her waist and gathered the reins with his other hand. Hold on, he said, and urged the horse into a canter back toward Brownsville. The ride took 20 minutes, and Diana spent most of it shivering despite the warmth of Robert's body behind her and the summer heat that hung in the air even after the rain. Her teeth chattered. Robert pulled her closer, sharing what warmth he could. How did you happen to be there? Diana asked when she could form words again. At the bridge, I mean. I was heading back to the ranch from town. I saw the bridge collapse and saw you go under. His arm tightened fractionally around her. I did not think. I just jumped in. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same. Diana was not sure that was true, but she did not argue. She leaned back slightly against his solid chest, too exhausted and shaken to maintain the distance propriety demanded. When they reached Brownsville, Robert guided the horse directly to Dr. Harrison's office, a small wood frame building on the main street. He dismounted first, then lifted Diana down, his hands strong on her waist. Her skirts were still heavy with water dripping onto the dusty street. Dr. Harrison looked startled when they entered his office, both soaking wet and Diana still trembling. Miss Ellis? What on earth happened? The bridge collapsed while she was crossing, Robert explained. She lost the medicine you gave her for her brother. She needs more. The doctor's expression grew grave. I see. And you are? Robert Bradley from the Double Bar Ranch. Dr. Harrison nodded, seeming to recognize the name. He turned to Diana with sympathy in his weathered face. The fever medicine was expensive, Miss Ellis. I know you used most of your savings to purchase it the first time. Diana's heart sank. She had used everything she had. Please, she said, her voice raw. Daniel will die without it. I will find a way to pay you. I can work. I can clean your office, wash your linens, anything. I can pay for it, Robert said quietly. Both Diana and the doctor turned to look at him. Diana shook her head quickly. No, I cannot accept that. You already saved my life. I cannot take your money too. Your brother needs medicine, Robert said, his tone matter of fact. I have money. It makes sense. He pulled out a leather billfold from his pocket, miraculously still intact despite his swim in the river. How much does she need, doctor? Dr. Harrison named the price, and Robert counted out the bills without hesitation. Diana wanted to protest further, but the image of Daniel's flushed face and glassy eyes stopped her. Pride was not worth her brother's life. I will pay you back, she said firmly. Every cent, I promise. Robert met her eyes, and something in his steady gaze made her breath catch. We can discuss that later. Right now, let us get this medicine to your brother. Dr. Harrison prepared another bottle of the fever medicine, along with some additional herbs. He gave Diana careful instructions on dosing, which she memorized even though she had heard them just hours before. When they left the office, Robert lifted her back onto his horse without a word. You do not have to take me all the way home, Diana said as he mounted behind her. You have already done so much. I am not letting you walk 3 miles in wet clothes, Robert said. Besides, I want to make sure your brother gets what he needs. Which direction? Diana directed him east out of town, along the road that skirted the river. The rain had stopped, and late afternoon sun was trying to break through the clouds, sending shafts of golden light across the landscape. The Texas terrain was a mix of scrubby brush, mesquite trees, and rocky soil. In the distance, The land rolled gently toward the horizon. "How long has it been just you and your brother?" Robert asked as they rode. 2 years. Our parents died of cholera. Daniel and I managed to keep the homestead. We have some chickens, a small garden. I take in sewing when I can get it. It is enough to get by, usually." Diana paused. "We do not have much, but it is ours." "That is something to be proud of," Robert said. "Not many people could do what you have done." Diana was not sure about that, but the words warmed her nonetheless. "What about you? Do you have family?" "My parents have a ranch up in Kansas. I am the youngest of 4 brothers. When I came of age, there was not enough work for all of us there, so I headed south to find my own way. I have been working at the Double Bar for 3 years now, saving money." "What are you saving for?" Robert was quiet for a moment. "My own place, eventually. A small ranch. Nothing fancy but mine." Diana understood that desire bone deep. The need for something of your own, something no one could take away. They reached the Ellis homestead as the sun was setting. It was modest. A small wooden house that desperately needed fresh paint, a chicken coop, a barn that leaned slightly to one side, and a few acres of land. Diana slid down from the horse before Robert could help her and hurried to the house. "Daniel!" she called as she pushed through the door. A weak voice answered from the back room. "Diana?" She rushed to the bedroom they had once shared with their parents. Daniel lay on the narrow bed, his face flushed red with fever, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He looked so young and vulnerable that Diana's chest tightened. "I have the medicine," she said, kneeling beside the bed. Her hands shook as she poured the correct amount into a spoon. "Drink this, Danny." Her brother obeyed, making a face at the bitter taste. "I thought you were not coming back," he said weakly. "It got dark." "I had some trouble, but I'm here now." Diana smoothed his damp hair back from his forehead. His skin was burning hot. "You are going to be fine." Robert appeared in the doorway, and Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "Who is that?" "A friend," Diana said. "He helped me get the medicine. Robert, this is Daniel." Robert nodded to the boy. "You need to rest and let that medicine work. Your sister went through a lot to get it to you." Daniel looked between them with confusion, but he was too weak to ask questions. His eyes were already drifting closed. Diana stayed beside him, holding his hand, until his breathing evened out into sleep. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Robert had started a fire in the small hearth, despite the summer warmth. He was right to do so. Diana was still shivering in her damp clothes. "You need to get out of those wet things," Robert said. "Do you have something dry?" Diana nodded, acutely aware of how improper it was to have a strange man alone in her house, but everything about this day had been improper and extraordinary. "I will just be a moment." She changed quickly in her parents' old room, peeling off the heavy wet layers and putting on a simple cotton dress and a shawl. When she came back out, Robert had found her kettle and was heating water for tea. "You did not have to do that," Diana said. "You have had a terrible day. Tea will help." Robert poured the hot water over the herbs she kept in a tin. "Sit down before you fall down." Diana sank into one of the 2 chairs at her small table. Now that the crisis was over, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her hands still trembled slightly as she accepted the cup of tea Robert handed her. He sat across from her, his own cup cradled in his large hands. In the firelight, his features looked softer, more approachable. There was kindness in his eyes. "Thank you," Diana said quietly. "I know I already said it, but thank you for everything. I would be dead if not for you. And Daniel would be." She could not finish the sentence. "You do not have to keep thanking me," Robert said. "I'm just glad I was there." They sat in silence for a moment, sipping the tea. Diana studied him over the rim of her cup. He was handsome. She could not deny that, with strong features and an easy confidence in the way he carried himself. But more than that, there was a goodness in him that showed in his actions. He had not hesitated to risk his life for a stranger. He had paid for medicine without expecting anything in return. He had made sure she and Daniel were cared for before thinking of himself. "I meant what I said," Diana told him, "about paying you back. It might take time, but I will." Robert set down his cup and leaned forward slightly. "Miss Ellis, Diana, I have a thought about that, if you're willing to hear it." "All right." The Double Bar is a big ranch. The owner, Mr. Patterson, his wife needs help around the house, cooking, cleaning, mending. She has been looking for someone reliable. The pay is decent, and you could work the hours around taking care of your brother. Robert paused. "I could put in a word for you if you want. Mrs. Patterson trusts my judgment. The money you earn could pay me back and help you and Daniel get ahead." Diana considered this carefully. "I have never left Daniel alone for long periods. Bring him with you once he is well. There is a bunkhouse where I stay, and a small cabin that is empty. Mrs. Patterson is kind. She might let you both live there in exchange for the work. It would be better then." He gestured around the small, worn house. Diana wanted to be offended, but she knew he was right. The homestead was falling apart. She barely kept food on the table. If Daniel got sick again, she would have no money for medicine. This could be an opportunity. "Why are you helping me like this, Jimru?" she asked. "You do not know me." Robert met her gaze steadily. "Maybe I want to." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that made Diana's pulse quicken. She looked away first, her cheeks warming. "I will think about it," she said softly. "That is all I ask." Robert stood, draining the last of his tea. "I should get back before full dark. Will you be all right here tonight?" "Yes, I will check on Daniel through the night and give him the medicine as the doctor said." Robert nodded. He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Diana, I am glad you are alive." The simple sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "I am glad you can swim." He gave her a small smile, the first she had seen from him, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart skip. Then he was gone, the sound of his horse's hooves fading into the night. Diana locked the door and returned to Daniel's bedside. She sat with him through the night, monitoring his fever and giving him medicine at the intervals the doctor had specified. She also thought about Robert Bradley, about his offer, about the way he had looked at her before he left. She barely knew him, and yet he had already changed her life completely. By morning, Daniel's fever had broken. He woke weak but clear-eyed, asking for water and food. Diana felt the tight knot of fear in her chest finally loosen. He would be all right. "Tell me what happened yesterday," Daniel said as he sipped the broth Diana had made. "You came back different. And that man?" Diana told him everything. The bridge collapse, drowning, Robert's rescue, the medicine, the offer of work. Daniel listened with wide eyes. "He jumped in after you?" Daniel said when she finished. "Just like that?" "Just like that." Her brother was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think you should take the job. We need the money, Diana. I hate seeing you work so hard just to keep us barely fed. And if this Robert says the people are good." He paused. "He seems good. You met him for 30 seconds while half unconscious with fever?" "Long enough to see how he looked at you," Daniel said with a knowing smile that made him look much older than 15. "And how was that?" Diana asked, trying to sound casual. "Like you were something precious?" Diana's cheeks heated. "You are delirious. Drink your broth." But Daniel's words stayed with her. 3 days later, when Daniel was strong enough to walk around the house without tiring, Robert returned. Diana saw him riding up the path, and her heart jumped in a way that had nothing to do with surprise. She met him outside, shading her eyes against the late morning sun. He dismounted and removed his hat, holding it in his hands. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "I wanted to check on your brother, see how he's doing." "He's much better. The fever is gone." Diana twisted her hands in her apron. "Thank you again for the medicine." "I'm glad he recovered." Robert shifted his weight. "Have you thought about what I said? About the job?" Diana took a breath. "I have. And if the offer is genuine, I would like to accept. Daniel and I, we need the stability." Robert's face lit up with a smile that made her stomach flip. That is wonderful. I spoke to Mrs. Patterson. She wants to meet you, but I told her about your situation and she is sympathetic. Can you come to the ranch tomorrow? Yes, we will both come. Good. I will meet you on the road into town and escort you from there. Robert put his hat back on. You will not regret this, Diana, I promise. After he left, Diana realized she was smiling. Daniel teased her about it mercilessly. The next day, Diana and Daniel set out early, taking their old wagon pulled by their elderly mule. They met Robert where the road forked, and he guided them north for another hour until they reached the Double Bar Ranch. Diana's eyes widened as they approached. The ranch was vast, with numerous outbuildings, extensive corrals filled with horses and cattle, and a large main house that looked like it belonged to someone wealthy. She suddenly felt very small and shabby in her plain dress. Robert seemed to sense her nervousness. Mrs. Patterson does not care about fancy things. She cares about honest work and good character. You have both. Mrs. Patterson turned out to be a woman in her 50s with graying hair, sharp eyes, and a direct manner that Diana appreciated. She looked Diana and Daniel over carefully in the parlor of the main house. Robert tells me you have been managing a homestead alone since you were 16, Mrs. Patterson said to Diana. That shows resourcefulness. Can you cook? Yes, madam, and clean, mend, preserve food, tend animals. I can do most things that need doing. What about reading and writing? My mother taught me I can do both. Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly. She turned to Daniel. And you, boy? What can you do? Daniel straightened despite his lingering weakness. I can work with animals, madam, chickens, horses, cattle. I'm good with my hands for building and fixing things, and I am a hard worker. He is, Diana added, and he is honest. Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. Finally, she said, I will hire you both. Diana, you will work in the house with me, cooking, cleaning, laundry, preserving 6 days a week, Sundays off. Daniel, you will work with the ranch hands, light work until you are fully recovered, then regular duties. You will both live in the cabin Robert mentioned. It needs some fixing up, but it has a good roof and a working hearth. Meals are provided for ranch workers. Wages will be fair. She named amounts that made Diana's breath catch. It was more than she had hoped for. Do we have an agreement? Mrs. Patterson asked. Yes, madam, Diana said quickly. Thank you. We will work hard for you. See that you do. You can start next week. That will give you time to settle your affairs at your homestead. Robert showed them the cabin after the meeting. It was small but sturdy, with 2 rooms and actual glass windows. To Diana, who had been living in a house with a leaking roof and cracked walls, it looked like luxury. I will help you move your things, Robert offered. Whatever you want to bring. You have done enough, Diana protested, but without much force. I have a wagon and strong arms. Let me help. He looked at her with those steady, whiskey eyes. Please. Diana found she could not refuse him. All right, thank you. The next week passed in a flurry of activity. Robert came by the homestead twice to help pack up their belongings and transport them to the ranch. They did not take much. Clothes, a few pots and pans, Diana's sewing supplies, their parents' wedding quilt, a photograph of their family. The chickens came too, relocated to a coop near the cabin. Diana arranged with a neighbor to look after the homestead and the small garden in exchange for part of the harvest. By the time they settled into the cabin at the Double Bar Ranch, Diana felt like her life had been completely transformed in the span of 2 weeks. She fell into her new routine quickly. Mrs. Patterson was exacting but fair, and Diana discovered she enjoyed the work. The kitchen was well equipped, the house was beautiful to maintain, and there was a satisfaction in doing the job well. Daniel thrived too. The ranch hands took him under their collective wing, teaching him about cattle and horses. His health improved with regular, substantial meals. He grew tanned and stronger, losing the gaunt look he had carried for months. And then there was Robert. Diana saw him every day. He worked as a ranch hand and a skilled one based on what the other men said. He was good with horses, dependable, hard-working, but he always found reasons to stop by the main house, delivering messages to Mr. Patterson, bringing in firewood that was not needed. checking on repairs that were not broken. Diana knew he was coming to see her, and she looked forward to it more than she should. They talked while she worked, easy conversations that ranged from the mundane to the meaningful. She learned that he loved working outdoors, that he had always been good with animals, that he missed his family but was determined to make his own way. He learned that she had once dreamed of being a teacher, that she loved reading but rarely had time for it, that she was fiercely protective of Daniel but sometimes wished she could be young and carefree instead of responsible for everything. "You are only 20, Robert said one afternoon as Diana kneaded bread dough in the kitchen. He was supposedly there to fix a loose hinge on the pantry door. "You should have time to be young." "Life had other plans," Diana said with a shrug. "I do not regret it. Daniel is worth everything." "You are a good sister. He is lucky to have you." Diana glanced at him. He was watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken. "I am the lucky one. I have him. And now you have a job that pays well, a safe place to live, and a friend who thinks you are remarkable." "A friend?" Diana asked, her hand stilling in the dough. Robert set down his tools and crossed the kitchen to stand on the other side of the work table. "I would like to be more than a friend, Diana, if you would allow it." Diana's heart hammered. "Robert!" "You do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "I know we have not known each other long. I know you have Daniel to think about and a new job to focus on. But I wanted you to know. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since the day I pulled you from that river." Diana looked down at her flour-covered hands. "I think about you too," she admitted quietly. "More than I probably should." When she looked up, Robert was smiling. "Then maybe you should think about me even more, just to see what happens in her." Diana laughed despite herself. "I am supposed to be working and you are distracting me." "I am fixing a door," Robert said innocently, returning to his tools. But he was grinning, and Diana could not stop smiling as she returned to her bread. That evening, Daniel cornered her in the cabin. "So are you and Robert courting or what?" "Daniel!" Diana threw a dish towel at him. He dodged it easily, laughing. "Everyone on the ranch can see how you look at each other. It is not subtle." "We are friends," Diana said, but she could feel her cheeks burning. "Right, friends." Daniel rolled his eyes. "He is a good man, Diana, and he makes you happy. I see you smile more now. You should let yourself have that." Diana sat down heavily on one of their chairs. "It is fast. Too fast. We barely know each other." "You know the important things," Daniel said seriously, sitting across from her. "You know he is brave. He jumped in a river to save you. You know he is generous. He paid for medicine he did not have to. You know he is kind. He helped us when we needed it most. Those are the things that matter." "When did you become so wise?" Diana asked, reaching over to ruffle his hair like she used to when he was small. He ducked away but was smiling. "I have a wise sister. I learned from her." Over the following weeks, Diana and Robert's relationship deepened naturally. They were together often by circumstance and by choice. Robert taught her to ride properly, taking her out on the ranch's gentler horses. Diana packed him extra food when he had to work long days. They sat together on the porch of her cabin in the evenings, talking as the sun set and the stars came out. Their first kiss happened 6 weeks after they met. Under those stars, they had been talking about constellations, and Robert had been pointing out patterns in the sky. Diana had been watching his face instead of the stars, noticing the way the moonlight caught in his eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the way his mouth curved when he smiled. He had caught her staring and gone still. "Diana," he had said, his voice rough. She had leaned in, and he had met her halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded. His hand had cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. When they pulled apart, Diana's heart was racing. "I am in love with you," Robert had said, direct as always. "I think I have been since the moment I pulled you from that river." "That is ridiculous," Diana had whispered. "You did not even know me." "I know you now, and I am still in love with you, more than before. Diana had kissed him again instead of answering, but the answer was in the kiss itself. They courted properly after that, with Robert asking Mr. Patterson's permission to call on Diana officially. Mrs. Patterson gave them her blessing too, clearly delighted. The other ranch hands teased Robert mercilessly, but it was good-natured. Everyone seemed to think they were well matched. 3 months after they met, Robert asked Diana to marry him. They were by the river, though much farther north than where she had nearly drowned. It was a peaceful spot, with the water running clear and gentle over smooth rocks. Robert went down on one knee in the grass and pulled out a simple gold band. "I do not have much to offer you yet," he said. "No ranch of my own, no house, but I have saved money, and I will keep saving. I will work hard to give you and Daniel a good life, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life. Will you marry me, Diana?" Diana pulled him to his feet and kissed him soundly. "Yes," she said against his lips. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married a month later, in October of 1874, in the small church in Brownsville. Daniel stood up for Diana, and one of Robert's fellow ranch hands stood up for him. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears. Mr. Patterson gave them 2 days off for a wedding trip, which they spent at a modest hotel in town, marveling at the luxury of privacy and time together. Their wedding night was sweet and fumbling and perfect. Robert was gentle with Diana, mindful of her innocence, and she felt safe in his arms. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Diana thought about how strange fate was. If the bridge had not collapsed, if Robert had not been riding past, if he had hesitated even a moment before jumping in, she would be dead. Instead, she was married to a man she loved beyond measure. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "How lucky I am, how unlikely this all is." "I think it was meant to be," Robert said. "I do not usually ride that road. But that day the foreman asked me to run an errand in town. If he had asked any of the other men if I had left 5 minutes later, if any single thing had been different." He tightened his arms around her. "I do not want to think about a world where I did not find you." "Then do not," Diana said, turning to kiss him. "We are here, together. That is all that matters." They returned to the ranch and moved into the cabin together, with Daniel good-naturedly moving his bedroll into the second room to give them privacy. Life fell into a comfortable pattern. Diana continued her work with Mrs. Patterson, who was thrilled to have her as a permanent member of the household. Robert worked hard, saving every penny toward his dream of his own ranch. Daniel was becoming an excellent horseman, with a natural talent for training animals. A year into their marriage, Diana discovered she was pregnant. She told Robert one evening after supper, nervous about his reaction. They had not planned for a baby so soon, though they had not prevented it either. Robert's face went through several emotions before landing on pure joy. He picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests. "We are having a baby," he said wonderingly. "Diana, we are having a baby." "You are happy?" she asked. "Happy?" "I am the happiest man in Texas." Their son was born in June of 1876, 2 years after Diana had nearly drowned. They named him James, after Robert's father. He was a healthy baby with a powerful set of lungs and his father's eyes. Robert was a natural with him, gentle and patient. Diana often woke in the night to find Robert holding James, walking him around the cabin, singing soft songs in his deep voice. Daniel was smitten with his nephew, proudly showing him off to the other ranch hands. At 17, Daniel was growing into a fine young man. He had been promoted to a regular ranch hand position with full pay, and he was starting to court a girl from town, the daughter of the general store owner. Life was good. Better than Diana had ever imagined it could be after losing her parents and struggling to survive. She had a husband she loved deeply, a son who was thriving, a brother who was building his own life, meaningful work, and a safe home. Sometimes she thought about that moment in the river, the terrible certainty that she was going to die, and she marveled at how completely everything had changed. When James was 6 months old, Mr. Patterson called Robert into his office. Diana waited anxiously, worried that something was wrong. But when Robert returned to the cabin, he was beaming. "Patterson wants to sell me 50 acres on the eastern edge of the property," Robert said, picking Diana up and kissing her. "At a price I can afford with what I have saved. He will loan me the rest at a fair interest rate. Diana, we can build our ranch, our home." Diana felt tears spring to her eyes. "Truly?" "Truly, Patterson said I'm the best ranch hand he has ever had, and he trusts me to succeed. He wants to help us get started." Robert set her down, but kept his hands on her waist. "What do you think?" "I think you have worked incredibly hard for this," Diana said, cupping his face. "I think you deserve it. I think we should do it." They broke ground on their house that fall. It was modest by Patterson standards, but palatial by theirs. 4 rooms, a real wooden floor, a stone hearth, glass windows. Robert did much of the work himself with help from Daniel and some of the other ranch hands. Diana contributed by continuing to work for Mrs. Patterson, her wages now going directly towards supplies for their new home. The house was finished in the spring of 1877. Moving day was emotional. Mrs. Patterson hugged Diana tightly, tears in her eyes. "You will still work for me?" she asked. "Of course," Diana assured her. "Just a bit less often. I will come 3 days a week." "You have become like a daughter to me," Mrs. Patterson said. "I am so proud of what you and Robert have built." Their ranch started small. 12 cattle, some chickens, a few horses. Robert worked it while also still doing some work for Patterson to bring in steady money. Diana managed the house, cared for James, tended the garden and animals, and continued her part-time work for Mrs. Patterson. It was exhausting but fulfilling in a way nothing else had been. Daniel stayed at the Double Bar Ranch, having been offered a permanent position as assistant foreman. He married his sweetheart, Emma, in 1878, and they moved into a small house in Brownsville. Diana was thrilled to see her baby brother so happy and settled. Over the next few years, Robert and Diana's ranch grew steadily. They bought more cattle, more land. Robert proved to have excellent business sense and a talent for breeding quality horses. Their reputation spread, and they started getting orders from buyers across Texas. Diana had 2 more children, a daughter named Clara in 1879 and another son named Thomas in 1882. The house was often chaotic with 3 young children, but it was filled with love and laughter. James was a serious boy who loved helping his father with the animals. Clara was bold and fearless, always getting into things she should not. Thomas was quiet and watchful, content to sit in Diana's lap and observe the world. Robert was a devoted father. No matter how tired he was from ranch work, he always had time to play with the children, to answer their endless questions, to tuck them in at night. Diana sometimes watched him with their children and remembered that terrifying moment in the river, and she felt overwhelming gratitude that fate had brought this man into her life. In 1885, 11 years after they met, Diana and Robert finally paid off their loan to Mr. Patterson. They owned their ranch outright. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch of their home, looking out over the land that was theirs. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is real," Diana said, leaning against Robert's shoulder. "That this is our life." "We built it together," Robert said, his arm around her. "Every bit of it. I was thinking today about the bridge, about drowning." Diana was quiet for a moment. "I was so scared. I thought I was going to die. I thought I would never see Daniel grow up, never fall in love, never have children. And then you were there." Robert turned to look at her, his hand coming up to stroke her cheek. "You were so brave. Even terrified and drowning, you did not give up. I saw you fighting to reach the surface. I was fighting because of Daniel. I could not leave him alone." Diana covered his hand with hers. "I did not know I was fighting to reach you too, that you would become my whole world." "You are my whole world," Robert said seriously. "You and our children. Everything I do is for all of you." Diana kissed him, soft and lingering. After 11 years of marriage, he could still make her heart race with a kiss. "I love you so much." "I love you too. Every single day." They sat together as the sun set. painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. Their cattle lowed in the distance. Inside, their children slept safely. The land stretched out before them, worked with their own hands, bought with their own sweat and determination. Years continued to pass, bringing challenges and joys in equal measure. There were droughts that killed crops and forced them to dig deeper wells. There were harsh winters that tested their cattle's survival. There were illnesses, injuries, setbacks. But there were also triumphs, bumper crops, successful calving seasons, new contracts. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. James grew into a responsible young man who clearly would take over the ranch someday. Clara remained wild and independent, declaring she wanted to train horses professionally. Thomas surprised everyone by showing a talent for numbers and business, keeping meticulous records that helped them maximize profits. Daniel and Emma had 4 children of their own and ran a successful farm supply business in Brownsville. The siblings saw each other often, their families close and intertwined. Daniel never forgot that Diana had nearly died trying to get him medicine, and Diana never forgot that Daniel had encouraged her to take a chance on loving Robert. On a warm June day in 1894, 20 years after the bridge collapse, Diana and Robert took their children to the river. A new bridge had been built years ago, sturdy and safe. But this was not about the bridge. It was about remembering. "Your mother almost died here," Robert told his children as they stood on the bank. James was 18 now, Clara 15, Thomas 12. They had heard the story before, but never at the actual place. "The old bridge collapsed, and she fell into the water. I pulled her out." "And then you fell in love and got married?" Clara said, rolling her eyes with the certainty of youth that romance was silly. "Then we fell in love and got married," Robert confirmed, smiling at Diana. "And now we have you 3. None of you would exist if your mother had not been brave enough to cross that bridge, if she had not been strong enough to fight the water, if I had not been riding past that exact moment." "It is like it was meant to be," James said thoughtfully. "I think it was," Diana said. She looked at Robert, at the man who had saved her life in more ways than one, who had given her a family and a home, and a love that sustained her through everything. "I think sometimes things happen exactly as they are supposed to, even when they seem terrible at the time." Thomas, always practical, said, "I am glad the bridge collapsed, otherwise I would not be here." They all laughed. Robert pulled Diana close, kissing the top of her head. "I am glad too, son, every single day." That evening they had a large family dinner at the ranch. Daniel and Emma came with their children. Mrs. Patterson, now elderly but still sharp, attended with her husband. Some of the ranch hands who had become friends over the years joined them. The house was full of noise and food and love. After everyone had eaten, Daniel stood up and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said. 20 years ago, my sister risked her life to save mine. She crossed a dangerous bridge in a storm to bring me medicine. She almost died doing it, but she was saved by the best man I know." He nodded to Robert. Robert saved Diana's life, and in doing so, he changed all of our lives. He gave my sister happiness. He gave me a brother. He built something incredible from nothing. So here is to Robert and Diana, to 20 years, to family, to never giving up even when you are drowning. Everyone raised their glasses, echoing the toast. Diana felt tears in her eyes. She looked around at the faces she loved, her husband, her children, her brother and his family, her friends. All of this had come from one terrifying moment, one act of courage, one man who had not hesitated to dive in after a stranger. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the children were asleep, Diana and Robert lay in their bed. The window was open, letting in the cool night breeze and the sound of crickets. "Happy?" Robert asked, his hand finding hers in the dark. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Diana said honestly. "You gave me all of this." "We gave each other this," Robert corrected. "You work just as hard as I do. You are the heart of this family, Diana. None of this would exist without you." Diana rolled to face him, though she could barely see his features in the darkness. "I was drowning when you found me. Not just in the river, but in life. I was so tired, so scared all the time, so alone, even with Daniel. And then you were there. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." Robert's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away the tear that had slipped down her cheek. "You saved me too. I was drifting, working toward a dream, but not really living. You gave me a reason to build something real. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. I love you more now than I did 20 years ago, and I will love you more in 20 more years." Diana kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it: love, gratitude, desire, commitment. After 20 years, his kiss still felt like coming home. The years continued to bring change. James married a lovely young woman named Sarah and began taking over more of the ranch operations, learning from Robert how to manage the business. Clara did indeed become a horse trainer, developing a reputation for her ability to work with difficult animals. Thomas went to school in Dallas to study business, with plans to help modernize the ranch's operations. Robert and Diana stepped back gradually from the day-to-day work, though neither could fully retire. The ranch was in their blood. But they had more time to spend together, to visit Daniel and Emma, to play with their growing number of grandchildren. Mrs. Patterson passed away in 1898 at the age of 78. Diana mourned her deeply. The woman had been more than an employer. She had been a mentor and a friend. At the funeral, Mr. Patterson took Diana's hands and said, "She loved you like a daughter. Thank you for bringing her so much joy." Mr. Patterson followed his wife 2 years later. In his will, he left Robert and Diana an additional 100 acres of land adjoining their property, along with a letter thanking them for their years of friendship and hard work. Diana cried when she read it, touched beyond words. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Robert and Diana celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary. They were in their 40s now, their hair showing threads of gray, their bodies bearing the marks of hard work and hard years. But to Diana, Robert was as handsome as the day he had pulled her from the river. And to Robert, Diana was as beautiful as she had been soaking wet and shivering in his arms. They had a small celebration, just family. All 3 of their children were there, along with James's wife and new baby. Daniel and Emma came with their grown children. The house was full once again, exactly as Diana loved it. "Make a speech, Dad," Clara urged Robert. Robert stood, his arm around Diana's shoulders. 26 years ago, I married the woman I pulled from a river. I did not know then that I was marrying my best friend, my partner in everything, the strongest person I would ever meet. Diana, you have given me the best 26 years of my life. You have given me 3 incredible children, a home I love, a life beyond my wildest dreams. I would dive into that river 1,000 times if it meant finding you at the end. Diana stood and kissed him while everyone cheered. And I would cross that bridge again, she said when they pulled apart, knowing you would be there to catch me. The years that followed were gentle ones. Robert and Diana became full-time grandparents, delighting in spoiling the grandchildren and then returning them to their parents. They traveled a bit, visiting Kansas to see Robert's family and taking a trip to San Antonio just for the adventure of it. They worked in their garden, maintained the parts of the ranch they still managed, and spent long evenings on their porch watching the sunset. In 1910, on the 36th anniversary of the bridge collapse, they returned to the river one more time. They were older now, moving more slowly, but still strong. They stood on the bank where Robert had pulled Diana from the water all those years ago. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not been there?" Diana asked. "Never," Robert said firmly. "I cannot imagine a world where I did not save you, where we did not build this life together." "I think about it sometimes," Diana admitted. "I think about drowning, about never having this life. And then I look at everything we have, and I am so grateful for you, for our children, for every moment." Robert pulled her close, and they stood together by the river, the water flowing past peacefully. So much had changed since that terrifying day, They had built a ranch, raised a family, created a legacy. They had weathered storms and droughts, sickness and loss. Through it all, they had each other. "I love you," Robert said, the same words he had spoken thousands of times over the decades. They never got old. "I love you too," Diana replied, meaning it as much as she ever had. "My hero, my husband, my heart." They walked back to their wagon hand in hand, their steps in sync after so many years together. The Texas sun was warm on their faces. Their ranch waited in the distance, home to their children and grandchildren. It was a good life, a blessed life, all because a bridge collapsed beneath a desperate woman, and a cowboy dove in and found her. In the years that followed, Diana and Robert became beloved figures in Brownsville. Their ranch was successful and well-respected. Their children were prominent members of the community, and their enduring love story was told and retold until it became local legend. Young couples spoke of hoping for a love like Robert and Diana Bradley's. Parents told their children about the importance of courage and kindness, using Robert's rescue as an example. Diana continued her charity work, started years ago when their ranch became profitable. She organized collections for families in need, helped new settlers get established, and was always the first to arrive when someone needed help. Robert supported her completely, often donating money or supplies or his own labor to her causes. Clara married in 1905 to a man who shared her passion for horses. They established their own training facility on land Robert and Diana gave them. Thomas returned from Dallas with new ideas about ranching and business, implementing changes that increased profits while modernizing operations. James and Sarah had 4 children, keeping the Bradley name strong into the next generation. Daniel lived a long, healthy life, never forgetting that he owed it to Diana's bravery and Robert's generosity. He was a doting uncle to his nieces and nephews, and his own children grew up knowing the story of how their aunt had nearly died to save their father. As Robert and Diana grew older, they slowed down but never stopped. They still walked their land every day, checking on the cattle and horses they no longer truly needed to manage but could not give up caring for. They still sat on their porch every evening, talking or sitting in comfortable silence. They still reached for each other in the night, finding comfort and love in the familiar touch. In 1920, Diana fell ill with pneumonia. She was 66 years old, and though she fought hard, her body was tired from decades of hard work. Robert never left her side, holding her hand, telling her stories of their life together, reminding her of all the joy they had shared. "I am not ready to let you go," Robert said one night when she was struggling to breathe. Diana squeezed his hand weakly. "We had 46 years, she whispered. 46 years we never should have had. I was supposed to drown in that river, Robert. Everything after you pulled me out has been a gift." "You are the gift," Robert said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You are everything." "I love you," Diana said. "In this life and whatever comes next, I will find you again." "I will be looking for you," Robert promised. Diana recovered from the pneumonia to everyone's relief and mild surprise. The doctor said it was sheer stubbornness that pulled her through. Robert said it was because they were not finished yet. They had 4 more years together. 4 more years of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. 4 more years of sunsets on the porch. 4 more years of love. Diana passed away peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1924 at the age of 70. She had been tending her garden that day, laughing with Clara about something one of the great-grandchildren had said. She had kissed Robert goodnight and told him she loved him, and then she had simply not woken up. Robert was devastated. He had known this day would come eventually, but knowing did not make it easier. He felt like half of himself had been torn away. At the funeral, he stood before the gathered crowd and spoke about his wife. "Diana was the bravest person I ever knew," he said, his voice breaking. "She was brave when she crossed a dangerous bridge to save her brother. She was brave when she trusted a stranger after he pulled her from the river. She was brave when she started a new life with nothing but hope and determination. She was brave every single day of our marriage, facing challenges head on, never backing down, never giving up. She made me a better man. She gave me a beautiful family. She filled my life with love. I will miss her every moment of every day until I join her again. Robert lived for 6 more years without Diana. He was cared for by his children, who had inherited their mother's kind hearts. He spent his days on the porch of the home he and Diana had built, looking out over the ranch they had created from nothing. He talked to her often, as if she could hear him. Maybe she could. James ran the ranch now with help from Thomas and occasional input from Clara. They honored their parents' legacy by keeping the ranch prosperous and treating their workers fairly. The Bradley Ranch was known as a good place to work, a place where people were valued. Robert passed away in the winter of 1930 at the age of 76. His children found him in his favorite chair on the porch, a blanket over his lap, a peaceful expression on his face. In his hand was the photograph of Diana from their wedding day. They buried him next to Diana in the cemetery overlooking the ranch. The headstone read, "Robert Bradley, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He dove in and found her." The story of Robert and Diana Bradley lived on long after they were gone. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren grew up knowing how their family had started, with a collapsing bridge, a swollen river, a drowning woman, and a cowboy who did not hesitate. They learned about courage, about love, about building something meaningful with your own hands. The ranch remained in the family for generations. The house Robert built was preserved and expanded but never torn down. The land they had worked so hard to acquire stayed in Bradley hands, and every generation was told the story of how it all began. The bridge that collapsed had been replaced long ago, but there was a marker now at the spot where Robert had pulled Diana from the water. It was placed there by their grandchildren, a simple stone that read, "Here 2 lives were saved, and a legacy was born." June 1874. People still visited sometimes, locals and descendants alike. They would stand by the river and imagine that moment. The terrified woman in the water, the determined man diving in, the beginning of something beautiful in the midst of something terrifying. Because that was the truth of Robert and Diana's story. It was not just a tale of rescue. It was a story about how the worst moment of your life could lead to the best, how courage and kindness could change everything, how love could grow from tragedy into something strong and lasting and real. Diana had been drowning when the bridge collapsed beneath her. Robert had dove in and found her. And in saving her life, he had found his own. They had built a love that lasted a lifetime and a legacy that lasted generations. They had proven that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Their story lived on in the land they had worked, the family they had raised, the lives they had touched. It lived on in every couple who looked at each other and hoped for a love as strong as the Bradleys. It lived on in every act of courage, every moment of kindness, every decision to help a stranger in need. She was drowning when the bridge collapsed beneath her. The cowboy dove in and found her, and together they built something that would never be forgotten.